Good afternoon. Isn't it lovely today, Sarah?
Yeah, Rick.
Last week on EPX, the paradigm of perfect competition equilibrium was discussed in detail. To recap,
I'm Diana First, and this is an EPX exclusive. I'm interviewing Benny Factor, an average working man of society. Benny, tell us in your own words what you think of perfect competition.
I think you're great, Diana. Competition is simply better. I dare say it can be perfect. You're great news, lady.
Thanks. Could you explain why it's so perfect?
Yeah. Your eyes tell the story. I love your mouth. Well, consumers love it. Maximum efficiency and minimum prices.
True, but couldn't you argue that this is simply a paradigm, that in reality factors such as the presence of substitutes and the large amount of buyers and sellers negate the whole perfect concept?
I love this show, but yes, of course. Other factors, such as firms maximizing their profits, creates an unfair market. Also, as a consequence of this money-making firms, there is a risk, in most cases, of environmental pollution, noise, pollution, and traffic, Diana.
So I'm right, it's only a theory.
Yes.
Great, thank you, Benny, for your time.
Grand.
In this week's edition of EPX, we will divulge the ideas behind monopolies, oligopolies, and monopolistic competition.
our documentary crew, led by the renowned director Seth Lepod, with the assistance of Monopoly plc, has produced an in-depth, cutting-edge and informative piece on these theories and their effect on economic markets. Enjoy!
Enjoy!
What is monopoly? As my father once said, to understand monopoly, you must monopolise. Monopoly is one firm producing a good for which there are few substitutes. This firm must be the only seller of the goods. No competition. Entry into the market is regulated. There are barriers to entering this market. For example, something like this. These barriers include the granting of copyright, sole ownership of the resource, significant economies of scale, government ownership, product differentiation, and certain circumstances such as location, timing, etc., etc., etc.
Go.
Now, Diana First and Sarah Nade will explain the problem of consumer surplus when a monopoly controls the market. Consumer surplus is an economic measure of consumer satisfaction, which is calculated by analysing the difference between what consumers are willing to pay for a good or a service relative to its market price. A consumer surplus occurs when the consumer is willing to pay more for a given product than the current market price.
Here is the 1923 consumer surplus crisis.
How much?
3,000.
Alright.
Thank you.
Hello, I'd like to buy a pair of sunglasses,
3,000 big ones.
please. Really? That's 4 weeks' wages. That's daylight robbery.
You gotta pay.
Bam! There's consumer surplus.
That's a great example of consumer surplus. As we can see, higher prices, but also less output. Profits to a monopoly instead of benefits of lower prices to consumers. This culminates in a welfare loss for society and reduces, to a large extent, innovation. That summarises consumer surplus.
Bonjour, I'm Xavier Money, and this is an EPX exclusive.
Behavioural regulation by governments is an important aspect in control of these monopolistic entities. Governments make sure that the monopoly does not charge the price at once. As an alternative, they choose the price. We have seen this change most recently in Ireland with the regulation of the country's energy supply through new DAL and EU directives. Now on to oligopolies with Sarah Nade and Diana First.
An oligopoly is a market form in which a market or industry is dominated by a small number of sellers.
Yes, Sarah. Examples of these oligopolies are Coca-Cola and Pepsi, Taylors and Walkers, McDonald's and Burger King.
These firms compete in a specific oligopolistic fashion in regards to prices, products, new customers, marketing and designing complements for their good.
In theory, one oligopolist would like to defeat the other oligopolist to control the market or industry and therefore transform it into a monopoly. Now on to Seth and Xavier.
Collusion can be a detrimental problem in oligopolistic markets. Collusion is when firms get together and agree on prices and output, creating, in essence, a monopoly. They're called cartels. and are illegal.
For collusion to occur, certain conditions must be present. Demand for product must be relatively inelastic. Few substitutes must be present. Members of cartels must play by rules, the idea of teamwork. Think of cocaine cartels in Latin America, relatively inelastic, no substitutes, and certain gangs ally themselves with others. Finally, tacit collusion denotes no formal agreement, but still operating under the same ideas. Night to Diana First and Rick Ottercheese.
Price leadership also occurs in oligopolies. For this to transpire, there must be one large firm and lots of other small ones. In turn, the large firm sets the prices and the competitors feel compelled to match the set price. Rick Ottercheese will explain this idea with the example of hotels, using cute, tiny little red house things.
Thank you. Let's declare that this is a chain of Hilton hotels in my left hand, and this, in my right hand, is a small privately owned local hotel. If Hilton hotels drop their prices from €100 a night to €50 a night, then competitors will, in most cases, try to match the same price.
Can I join this game, Rick?
Yes, you may, Sarah.
Okay, I'm going to pretend I'm the small hotel and you can play the larger one.
Yes, that would make sense, Sarah.
Right, Rick. I'll attempt to make economic decisions based on my evaluations of the market and its current state. There are two fashions of predicting these market decisions that I will focus on. Firstly, I will explain my favourite, the corridor model. And my colleague, Save Your Money, will explain the other. Let's take this duopoly, for example. It is given that the output of the small hotel depends to some extent on the output of the Hilton hotel chain. The small hotel will then evaluate the market and estimate how much the Hilton will produce. In turn, the small hotel will try to maximize its profits based in the outstanding market share. Xavier?
Second type of behavioural techniques incorporated by many oligopolistic assemblies is game theory. This theory was crafted by Nobel Prize-winning economist John Nash. What a beautiful mind. The theory is simple yet genius. It involves the use of market prediction and reaction to help maximise a company's profits. Nash devised an equilibrium whereby players play their best strategy given what their competitors are doing. Each player is assumed to know the equilibrium strategies of the other players, and no player has anything to gain by changing only his own strategy unilaterally. To even the playing field in economic markets, governments regulate mergers and fine companies seriously if in breach of price-fixing laws. I'm Xavier Money.
Thank you, Xavier, for once again a red-hot EPX special. So, audience, what have we learned today?
Well, Rick,
We have learned that oligopolies and monopolies have prices above the marginal cost, and that they are both inefficient. However, for all you oligopolists out there, your prices are on average not as high as a monopolist.
But we love you all equally, isn't that right, Rick?
I'm Rick, the market doc Ottercheese on EPX.
And I'm Sarah Nave.
Good night, and good luck.
Cut!
I need a stiff whiskey and oat.
Next week on EPX, how did the 1973 OPEC oil crisis affect the Grandmaster Flash? Find out on next week's edition of Rick Ottercheese's EPX.
It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under. It's like a